Hello, everybody. This is Karen Porter. I am going to be recording today's lecture. This is Thursday, January 29th. And right up front, I just want to thank everybody for hanging in this crazy first week of class. I've had a little bit of just a goofy ride the last few days. Things went really well in the surgery, but I did have to go into the hospital, so it ended up not being totally outpatient as I was expecting, and that put me back about a day or so. In any case, I'm home now, and I apologize for getting this second lecture up for you a little bit later than expected. But we are ready to get started, and I just want to thank you again for bearing with me. I'm really looking forward to being in class in person next week. I also want to just apologize up front. I'm sitting in kind of a goofy position, just to kind of keep the pain tolerance as effective as possible, and I may sound a little bit weird, so I apologize for that up front. But if you can just hang in with me, then hopefully next week we can be back to normal and you won't have to deal with all this crazy stuff. So thank you again. Also, right up before I start the presentation today, I wanted to let you know this lecture is actually being recorded for both of my classes, the 420 Integrated Online Marketing and also Integrated Marketing Communications 343. Normally I do not do that, but honestly this kind of out the gate overview of what's happening in marketing in 2015 and just giving you some broad brush overview about what's going on in online marketing and some of the key things you need to know as foundational information will be really helpful for both classes. So this will be the only time this semester you're going to have this happen. But for those of you that are in 343 and the 420 class, if you've already seen this in one place or the other, you do not need to watch it twice. So just wanted to share that with you right up front. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and get started and hope the slides work with me well this morning. I have a little bit of trouble getting some of these to take, so anyway, before we get started, I just wanted to say if there's anybody who was not here on Tuesday to me, please make sure to review the recorded lecture notes from the first day of class. I really gave, especially in the 340 class, a pretty detailed information just because that class is so unique as being a very hands-on class. I want to make sure that everybody is well apprised as to what they're getting into in that class. And so if anybody feels a need to drop the course or just doesn't feel like it's going to fit well with their schedule this semester, which I completely understand if that's the case for some of you, I just wanted to give you that good overview right up front before too much time lapsed in the class. Also, for the Marketing 420 students, to make sure that you are subscribed right away to the following two blogs. The HubSpot marketing blog, there's going to be a quiz next Tuesday. This is only the 420 class. And that is to make sure that you have listened to the blogs for Friday and Monday. You can skip Thursday's blogs or Wednesday's blogs if you happen to listen to those. From here on out, though, it's every weekday you will be asked to listen to all of the blogs that they put out, or to read all the blogs, I should say. There are a few that you will listen to, but most of them will just be print blogs. And also, if you haven't yet subscribed, those of you, again, only in the 420 class, will need to sign up to the osmm.net blog that you will find right on the upper right-hand side of that website. That will allow you to be subscribed to the blog, get any updates through the blog on your email, and that will be a way I'm communicating with you this semester, so I really want you to sign up for that right away. And with that, I think we're actually ready to get into the presentation today. I did want to give you just a little bit of background about my background, if you will, just so that you know why I'm teaching this class. I have actually been on and off at the business school since the late 80s. I taught at the U of M from I think it was 86 to 93. And taught several courses there: Integrated Marketing Communications, Introduction to Business, which was a 100 level course, taught 360 marketing quite a bit, but the one course that I taught that was really kind of my I guess you would say my focus at that time was a course we no longer have at the business school called the Ad Competition, and it was where we had roughly about 160 schools across the United States participating in an ad competition where we would get an overview from a major company like Levi's or Chevrolet or Kellogg's or any number of different projects came down the pike while we were doing that. And we would literally get an outline from that company. It was, well, it was more than an outline. It was about a 50-page document walking us through what their problem was, what they were hoping to come to our ad agency for. Was what we did is we pretended we were an ad agency. And we had to come up with a problem solution in developing a creative campaign, a media campaign, and usually there was some other component like a public relations campaign and or sales promotion was quite common, although every campaign was a little bit different. For example, the year we did Kellogg's, we had to actually name a cereal and package the cereal. Another year we did Hertz, and that's a publishing company. They wanted us to design a new magazine for them and to really cover off not only the advertising component, but to come up with a magazine idea and how it would be packaged, who it would be targeted to, etc. So every year was very, very different. I learned as much as the students, and the students learned a ton. So it was a tremendously rewarding experience. And then we took that presentation that we came up with, we put together a 50-page written, I guess you would say a proposal, as if we were pitching to that agency, giving them the highlights of our solution. And then we also had to do a 20-minute verbal presentation. And we took that to the district competition, which moved around the Pacific Northwest. But we were in a region that contained Washington, Idaho, Montana, not Wyoming, Oregon, British Columbia, Alberta, and Alaska. So 7 states and provinces involved, and then the winner of that competition, which was usually somewhere between 10 and 13 schools at the regional level. The winners of the regional competition would go to the national competition, and there were 15 teams representing the various AAF, American Advertising Federation, regions around the country. And very, very exciting the first year that we went to national competition, which was for the Hertz campaign. The next year we also went back to national competition as the winner of our district for American Airlines. And then in 1992 was really exciting because not only did we go to nationals, we won the whole darn thing as really an underdog. Most of the schools we were competing against had advertising departments, and as you know at U of M, we do not have an advertising department. So it just goes to show what good old thinking, hard work, dedication, and a lot of really bright students could do when they were up against some very, very tough competition. And that particular year was for the Visa campaign. And I only share that with you is because that was really my launching board into a whole nother era of my life, I guess you would say, is because the students and I both got quite a bit of exposure from that particular project. And as I was going through some personal challenges in my life a couple years later, after that had occurred at the national level, I got a call one day from Texas, the state lottery down there, which had just started. And they said, we're looking for a director of marketing, and I think you might be a really good fit for this. And lo and behold, behind that recruiting call was someone who had at one time been with the Great Falls Advertising Federation. And she was aware of my work and just said, you've done everything that we need you to do here. You just did it with students instead of for a business. Now, I'd already been doing a lot of marketing consulting with small businesses, but in Montana, most small businesses truly are small. So here I am going from Montana to the Texas Lottery, and my annual marketing budget down there was $94 million a year. Talk about being scared out of my wits. But it just goes to show again that anybody can do anything if they put their mind to it and have their heart and soul and head in the right place. And consequently, I had a very successful and exciting almost 4-year run at the Texas Lottery. And then I moved on to a company called Aramark Educational Resources, which was a division of the Aramark Corporation, which is I think they're a Fortune 300 company at this point. They're an international company, and their child care and education division was kind of an odd fit in the company portfolio, but nonetheless it was one well suited for me because my original degree was in education, and I actually spent a couple years teaching at the secondary and elementary level before my life went in a totally different direction later on, and I ended up in marketing when I came back to get a graduate degree. So my 4 years, or excuse me, 7 years at Aramark were extremely rewarding, but very, very different than the Texas Lottery. At Texas, I primarily did, as far as media was concerned, almost all of our advertising was done on television and radio with a lot of point of sale materials because most lottery tickets were sold in convenience stores. At Aramark, we were very much in a different situation in that it would have been a tremendous amount of waste if we would have tried targeting on radio and television. So we went into very niche products like parenting magazines and publications in local markets. We did a lot of direct mail. We did a lot of point of sale material in the educational centers or the learning centers. Most of our business was in the infant to preschool area, and then we also had a number of programs that were located in elementary schools, and we leased out space from elementary schools and ran a before and after school program for them, whereas parents could drop their kids off as early as 6:30 in the morning and pick them up as late as 5:30 or 6 o'clock at night, depending on the location. And it allowed parents to not have to worry about transporting their children from school to another location to get childcare. So between all of those entities, we had about 1,200 childcare locations across the United States. At the Texas Lottery, I forgot to mention this to you, unless you were in my marketing class this winter session, you may have heard that we did about $4 billion in sales the last year I was there. So that was a huge, huge enterprise. In any case, both of those corporate positions were fantastic. I learned a tremendous amount. Unfortunately, the ride at Aramark Educational Resources ended fairly suddenly when Aramark, the company that owned us, decided that the child care division really wasn't a good fit in their corporate portfolio, and I would certainly have to agree with that. So they decided to divest and sold us off to another company, and unfortunately, the company that purchased us just didn't have the I guess you would say the ethical makings of a company that I wanted to work with. So I decided to move on from there, and that led to a very uncertain point in my life, I guess you would say, where I was not really working in any outside capacity for another company, at least, for several years. And so I decided in that next year, 2004, my daughter and I had kind of stumbled upon a weird little idea of making this crazy candle that you used on your skin. It was made out of cosmetic ingredients, and you'll probably hear me talk a little bit about that in both of the courses this year, at least in small segments. But the reason I really want to bring up that company is because my online exposure really started at Aramark. We had a horrible website that I inherited when I joined Aramark in '97. It was one of the very first websites that went up in the mid-90s, and it was literally awful. And it was okay for the first few years because everybody was just getting their feet wet in the online world. But by the time that the late 90s rolled around, it was literally an embarrassment, and I had to get my feet wet very personally, because the interesting scenario was this. The company that we'd hired to build the website had gone out of business. The person on the inside that had put the website up originally had left the company, and not only had she left, but she was taking a 2-year backpacking trip around the world. So she was not accessible at all. And unfortunately, the web was still so new and so I guess you would say just a mystery to a lot of people, that no one really wanted to touch it with a 10-foot pole. Everybody was scared of, what is this? How does it work? We're afraid we're going to mess something up. Everything you do is going to be available to the world to see. And consequently, it kind of came down to, I think I will get my feet wet and get in there and just dive in head first, and then nobody can feel like I threw them under the bus And I would just learn a whole lot in the process. And fortunately for me, I was right in my thinking that, I think this internet stuff is going to stay around for a while. So it was probably one of the best things that I could have done. So consequently, I took that learning, and then when I had Skinny Dip Candles for 7 years, I actually put that knowledge to use, and that was the time that I put up my very first website on my own 100%. I had to learn SEO inside and out so that my site would come up and be ranked. I had to learn pay-per-click. I had to learn a whole lot of things I didn't have exposure to before. And consequently, I learned a tremendous amount by trial and error during that period of 2004 until we sold the company in 2012. And I will have to say it was at that point that I figured out that, you know what, I really like this online stuff. It's challenging, it's ever-changing, it is frustrating, it's exciting all at the same time. It's not an easy way to go in marketing just because it is ever on the move and everything is a continual it's just continually moving at the speed of light, it seems like. What you learn today may be undone tomorrow, but at the same time, it keeps it from being boring. It is extremely innovative all the time, and there's just a lot of reasons to really love internet marketing too. So if you can get over the part that it's already always changing and that you need to be pretty self-sufficient when you're doing it, I think you'll find it a very interesting field as well. In any case, I found myself back at the university in 2011 through present, and one of the first things I did was suggest that we add a class in internet marketing, and because I was also teaching integrated marketing communications at the time, I started interweaving a section on any section that I taught, just because those textbooks that you have in courses like 360 and 325. Course numbers have changed in the last few years, if some of you weren't aware of that. So you'll occasionally hear me slip there. Principles of Marketing 325, Integrated Marketing Communications 343, and I know there are some other courses in the business school that have at least a chapter on digital marketing, online marketing, or whatever they choose to call it. The problem, however, is that they keep that information, as I've already touched off in my overview presentations, they keep that information very, very sketchy and at a very high level, because if they put anything too detailed, it would be out of date as soon as the textbook went to print. So consequently, I really felt like the business school needed a course that was dedicated to learning about online social media marketing much more in depth than you can cover in a few lectures in a given class. So that's how this particular course 420 was born. We decided to test it out in the spring of, I think it was 2011, and consequently that very first year we taught it, everybody was a little nervous. Would anybody want to take this course? It was just offered as an elective, and we really didn't know what to expect. Needless to say, it was a resounding success. I had 46 students in that first section, and coming next fall, well, I guess you would say this spring is be the first, it is going to be taught every semester now instead of once a year. So the class sizes hopefully are not going to be nearly as large, and that allows me to spend more time with individual students. So in any case, apologies for the long-windedness there, but I think it's important for you, especially those of you that are taking the 420 class, but also those of you taking the 343 class, just to know why I believe, and I want to even in that class give you probably more information than what some of the other instructors that teach that class may cover off. And it's just because it's my passion at this point, and I really feel it's an important piece of information that you all need in your marketing tool belts before you graduate and go off and find your first jobs. What I was hearing from a lot of students was, geez, you get out there, you've got a marketing degree, they're just assuming you have a background in social media, in analytics, in a lot of things that there are now business courses for, that wasn't the case a few years ago. So I think that you're actually going to find yourself in a very good position having taken some of these specialty courses that maybe aren't required, but that would be good for you to have, because guess what? Employers just assume you have that knowledge. So consequently, I was getting calls from students saying, You know, I just got this job and they just asked me to take over their Facebook business campaign. I have no idea what I'm doing. Or I would get a call from someone who says, I just got this great internship, true story, in Germany, and they basically want me to take over the SEO on their website. I don't have any idea what I'm doing. I was getting call after call about these types of things, so that's why this course arose, and the 420 course rather, and why I put more information than maybe normal in the 343 class. So, okay, on to the next slides. Enough about me. Let's talk about the good stuff. Jumping into the online world, I've already talked to you mostly about these things, so I'm just going to skip over this slide. Basically, I covered that off in the last one. I did just want you to know that from an entrepreneurial standpoint, though, that Skinny Dip Candles really was a self-sustaining business. I mean, my family and my daughter's family made our entire livings off of that website, as well as, we had a few people hired from time to time as well. We kept it small purposely because we didn't know where we were going with it. I knew that I didn't want to do that long term, and so consequently I made a conscious decision not to try to scale up and take it to the moon. But it was a very, very viable business, and it was totally self-sustaining of two households for a total of about 8 years, I guess, until we sold it. So just want you to know that the entrepreneurial side of the online marketing world is another side, and we will talk a little bit about the entrepreneurial side. Those of you that are in the 420 class, we will be discussing some of those, and I'll give you some ideas to how to do research to find out what a good topic, what a good niche might be, how you could expect different ways you could make money online, and so on and so forth. So we'll be covering some of that off as we move along the way. A few things I just wanted to talk about off the top about the benefits of online marketing. One of the things I really like about online marketing is that so many more people are able to get into having a business of their own, because getting started online is a drop in the bucket cost-wise compared to if you were to start a traditional bricks and mortar type business. The costs are just minuscule in comparison. Now, that does not mean that you do not have to have a good business plan and a real good idea as to what you're doing, why you're doing it. You still need to have your target market in mind, have 4 very well aligned 4 Ps, etc., etc. But nonetheless, if you have an idea, it can be something that many times you could take to the online world that maybe it wouldn't even be feasible to have in the offline world. I could have never made it in a store just trying to sell Skinny Dip candles. But if you go online, all of a sudden you've got the world that might be interested in this very specialty candle. And that was exactly what happened to us. We sold all over the world. I think the last count that I took before I sold the business, we had sold to individuals ordering from 27 different countries. That was pretty cool, given the fact that I had never, ever tried to market outside of the U.S. at all. In fact, international sales were kind of a pain in the rear. We weren't going to turn them down, but it was just kind of interesting to see how people would find us, even though we didn't ever do any pay-per-click campaigns outside of the U.S. I didn't try for organic rankings outside of the U.S., but some of that just happened anyway. Another definite benefit is far less costly than many other major media. So again, you have to be very highly targeted and know who your audience is. But the thing about online media is that you can be very, very tightly targeted through things like pay-per-click campaigns, through organic searches, and what have you. So consequently, even if you're paying for outside consulting to handle your pay-per-click and or SEO, you are still going to be paying far, far less for that kind of consulting than you would be if you were buying traditional media. And depending on what your product or service is that you're selling online, you may well be using other traditional media as well. It's not an all or none thing. It's definitely a marrying of the two, and what that media mix looks like is going to be highly dependent on what business you're in, what industry you're in, who your niche is, and so forth. Another benefit of online media or online marketing is just there's far better analytics, and it's easier to measure results. When you're in the online world, you have things like Google Analytics to put on a website or other metric systems. You have, if you're doing Facebook advertising, you have a whole dashboard worth of things that you can analyze and extract and look at various ways. You know, so many times the biggest frustration I would hear in traditional media is, you know, hey, we're doing all this advertising, we don't know which part's really working. And unless you're tying your media methodology to discount codes or couponing or vouchers or whatever you might want to call them, it's very difficult to do any kind of tracking with traditional media. It's not impossible, but it's difficult. So the tracking and analytics is something that is just fabulous in the online world. And many times you can get really good learning in the online world. And then as far as how people are looking for you, what kinds of things they're looking for, you can take that information and you can actually use that information to sell outside of the online world in traditional media. You might just be able to take it and sell, you know, to put terminology that they're using, for example, in your brochures, in your advertising that's on broadcast media, for example. So it's just definitely something that can be stretched beyond just what you're doing online. It's also, we've already touched on this one, but it's easy to sell outside of your local market. If you have a bricks and mortar store, most of your customer base is going to come within a certain mile radius of your place in business. If you're a Costco, you will, you know, likely draw from 100 miles around, if not more. If you are another type of business, you might just draw from a 3-mile radius, as was the case in a gift shop I owned in Texas. So in any case, you just really can expand your borders and go different places, open up your revenue streams to people far outside your local market when you're in the online space, and that's something that I really, really like, that versatility. And finally, benefits, a last one I have listed here, although I'm sure I'm just scratching the surface here, is that online is definitely convenient for everyone. You're not locked into store hours or being closed holidays or whatever. People can be online 24/7, 365, and your store is open those same hours. They can shop in the middle of the night, even when you're asleep. And there was nothing more exciting, I do have to share. I just loved getting up every morning and was like, check the website, you know, ding ding, you've got a couple of sales that came in overnight. It was really awesome to just know that you're not working, but your cash register on your website is. Going on to the next slide here, the drawbacks, the flip side. There's always a flip side. One of the things that's a flip side is something we've already alluded to, and that is it's very challenging to stay current with everything that is happening in the online marketing world. I think I shared in one or the other of the overviews, it was probably the 420 course where I went a little more in depth in my course overview than in 433. Gosh, I cannot keep that name of that. 343. I don't know why I have a hang up with that course number. In any case, the advertising course, the Integrated Marketing Communications course, I didn't go as much into detail in the overview as I did in the 420 course. What I shared with the 420 folks that have listened to that overview already is that it is impossible for anybody to be an expert in everything online marketing related. There are so many different vehicles out there. There are so many things changing about all of them all the time that I would be just straight up lying to you if I were to tell you that I'm an expert in everything online marketing. I consider my areas of expertise to be small scale websites, and by small scale meaning 50 pages or less. I prefer not to do shopping cart websites, although I've certainly done a number and I can. I like more informational sites. I'm very good on WordPress, although I choose not to do custom coding. That's just not where I want to spend my time. But I know SEO inside and out, and I can get almost any website to rank, and that's something that is continually changing, and you need to stay on top of it. WordPress itself is changing all the time. You have a new version of WordPress come out every few months. Your plugins change all the time. Some of those changes are you don't even notice the changes, and others are pretty significant. You may have to learn a whole new interface in some cases. Some of you have probably recognized over the years that you've been on Facebook. You just get used to Facebook looking one way and they change the interface. Not only how you look at the page and where you find things, but how you set it up and how you put things together when you are building it from the inside out as a person putting up a page. And the same can be true for any other online activity that you have. So whether it's pay-per-click, it's SEO, it is certain types of websites, it is just any number of things that we're going to be covering off in both classes to at least give you an overview. All of those things are changing all of the time, and it makes it extremely challenging for small business owners in particular to stay current and even know where they want to spend their time. That's probably the number one thing I hear from my small business workshops, is that we simply don't know where to spend our time. We don't know where it's wise to put our money, and we don't have time to keep up with all these changes. So consequently, many of them get started with a good faith effort, and a few months down the road, they're hardly ever posting to their Facebook page any longer, or their Pinterest page, or Twitter, or whatever it is they set out to do. I had to take just a quick drink of water there, guys. Sorry. I may have to do that a couple more times just because I've got this little bit of a hoarseness going on after the anesthesiology and having the tubes put down my throat and whatnot. I can only talk for so long. So I'm probably going to be very painful to listen to by the time we get to the end of this today. My apologies for that. So as far as the drawbacks are concerned, other things are, it's just challenging for businesses to know which strategies are best for their situation, what I just touched on. It can seem overwhelming, just touched on that as well. And the fact that you need specific skills to do online marketing really well. It's a huge advantage, so that's why most online marketers will find that they have a toolkit of 3, 4, 5 different things they do really well. And then when it comes to the other things, you find somebody else to outsource to do the things that you yourself do not feel like it's your core expertise. So I do a lot of AdWords and a lot of Facebook ads in particular. AdWords, though, if it's a big campaign, I will usually outsource that to someone that knows AdWords inside and out, whereas I know a good deal about AdWords, but I wouldn't want to take on someone's $10,000 a month account and say that, yes, I'm the best person to do this. I just don't feel like I would be. If it's several $100s a month, I'm fine with that. Although Facebook ads, I'm really good with Facebook ads, and I'm just using that as an example. As I mentioned, different people will have different areas of expertise, and you simply can't be an expert in all things online these days. Let's see, I'm finding my best bet to go down here and use the little arrows at the bottom of the page. So there we go. Websites. We're going to kind of jump over now into just kind of the introductory part of the online marketing world. And this is what I consider to be a slide. In fact, this particular slide I even shared with my 325 class during winter session. Really, a website is the hub of all things online. And honestly, this is my personal belief. There may be folks that disagree with me, but I really feel like you need to have a website today to be really taken seriously. A website today is a lot like a business card in the 90s. You know, you started being looked at strange if you didn't carry a business card by the end of the 90s, where early 90s it was still, yeah, you should have one, but not everybody did. And then pretty soon it was an expectation. Now, if you're going to be taken seriously online, having your own website, one that is not an offshoot of somebody else's website, is really deemed to be best. However, if it makes it easier to have a website presence, to have a WordPress.com website where your business name or your website name might be abcprinting.wordpress.com, that's certainly better than not having a website at all. I'm a proponent that you should have an independent website where you own the domain, you own the hosting, and you have total control over your website. I'm not going to get into all of that today, but I really think that is your best bet. And the reason for that is most people now just expect that if you're in business, you have a website. If you don't, they kind of wonder if you're really serious about this business that you have. So the website is the foundation, and then you will see all these arrows pointing in. And really, all of the other things you do online should be taking advantage of this website, which in turn will help your website do much, much better ranking in the search engines if you are having other things pointing in to your website. So as an example, social media, if you have a Facebook page, a Twitter page, and LinkedIn page, and that could also be Pinterest, Instagram, any number of things. These are just kind of the big ones that people talk about right off the top. All of those ideally should at some point in time, not every single post you put up, but some of those posts should be linking back to your website. That will help your website tell Google that, hey, we're important. We have links coming in from social media. Obviously, more than your own social media is even better, but simply linking back to your website. So rather than feeling like, geez, we just put up a new blog instead of sending people to Facebook to read all about your blog, just put a link in Facebook saying, hey, great new blog posted today on blah, 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 whatever it is, and then you send a link back to your actual website blog, and that is where your blog ideally should reside, by the way, is on your site itself. I'll talk more about that in a minute. Same thing, search engines. Your search engine searches result in pointing back to your website. If you are found in Google, if you're lucky enough to get a good placement in Google and someone finds your hyperlink back to your site, you're just going to link back to your site. If you are paying for, say, pay-per-click, you're doing Google AdWords, for example, when you set up your AdWords campaign, you need to link back to your site. So all of these things will link back to your website. You can't do an AdWords campaign if you don't have a website. Public relations, if you're doing online press releases or doing other things online that could get you publicity, you would want to point a link back to your website. If you are blogging, I really recommend that you do a blog that is connected to your site. We're going to talk a lot more about blogging in both classes, although certainly the 420 class is going to get much more in depth. But just as a quick overview here, the benefits of having a blog on your site can be summed up this way. Every time you post a new page on your website, which is something Google really likes to see, you're getting brownie points with Google because Google's saying, hey, this site is staying current. They're adding, they're updating, they're adding new information to their site. They view that site as having more value than one that has some static pages that are put up, and then 3 years later those same static pages are up. Maybe you've gone in, you've changed an address, you've added a new paragraph of text. Big deal. Google just sees that as being really nothing's being done to your site. Now here's the thing that's kind of interesting though. Depending on the type of site you have, you may not have reason to add a lot of new pages to your site. Your static pages on your site, the ones that are there ongoing, you maybe only need to have 10 pages or 20 pages or 50 pages, whatever the number of things that you're selling or explaining or whatever it is you're doing. However, if you are blogging, you can talk about things directly related, indirectly related to the things that are on your static pages. Depending on the industry you're in, you can add a lot of topics that may be even quite indirectly related, but they can still have meaning and helpful information for your client audience. When you post a blog to your website and your blog is integrated, so instead of linking from your website abcpainting.com out to a blog that's hosted elsewhere like on Blogger, you can actually go set up a website using WordPress, for example, and integrate that WordPress site onto an existing website, even if that existing site isn't WordPress. And now all of a sudden your blog is sitting on your website. And what that will do, every time you post a new page to your blog, it shows up in Google as if it were a new page. Google doesn't distinguish between blog posts and pages. They consider it website content. They look at it the same way. So consequently, even if you were only blogging once a month, by the end of the year, you would have 12 new pages added to your site. If you're using a recommended blogging frequency of at least once a week, that would be 48 pages of new website content over just the course of a year. So I think you can see where I'm going with that. That will definitely right there help your rankings. It's not you just have to start blogging and that's all you need to do. I'm not saying that at all, but it is one of the many things Google looks at, and blogging is taken very seriously by Google. So it's just something you want to think about. Email marketing, and again, these are all just examples. There's many other things out there that could also be pointing in examples. Things like social bookmarks would be one example. Getting traffic from other websites that are linking into you, etc. For right now, we're just kind of focusing on these because these are some of the most common things done, and they're things that you all can have some control over as well. Email marketing is something that is also done by a lot of folks, and we'll be talking a lot about email marketing in the 420 class, not as much in 343, but certainly some. And the key is here is that when you are marketing via email, you absolutely want to be linking back to your website, not putting all of your content in these other things, but putting a little bit, using it as teasers, and then driving people back to your website. That helps your website traffic count. It gives you an opportunity to explain a whole lot more on a website than you would ever want to put in a fairly short email. Same thing with some of these other things. You can only say so much in a search engine listing or a pay-per-click ad, but refer them to the website. The website can have a whole page about widget B17 or whatever it is. So it just gives you a lot more latitude to have your website be the hub, and that's where everything else drives back to, is your website. On the next slide here, we're going to be looking at, there we go. Oh, geez, this thing is so finicky. Sorry about that, guys. I'm going to have to back up here. Okay, there we go. Who is your target market? I know there's a few people in the 343 class and maybe one in the 420 class that just came out of my winter session class. That you just heard me ad nauseum talking about who is your target market. If you don't know your target market, as they used to say, you ain't got nothing. Target market drives everything. You have to know your target market inside and out to be a good marketer. Who is your market? How do they think? How do they feel? How do they use your product? As well as other things. These things that are listed down here on this slide are primarily your demographic factors, and while those are important, it's far more important that you understand the psychographic and lifestyle behaviors of your target market more so than the demographics. You know, my target market might be women 36 to 54, but I'm telling you that yes, that's who most of my women are in my gift shop in Texas. That was my demo, my real key demo, if you will. But let me tell you, within that market of women 35, or I guess it was 35 to 54, was my that's how the demographics usually break on the 5s and the 4s. So 35 to 44, 45 to 54. In any case, those women that made up that market were very different from one another. I had women getting married in their late 30s. I had women who were empty nesters in their late 30s. I had women that had never been married in their 30s. I had women that were full-time moms and stayed home and were basically soccer moms, extracurricular activity leaders, so on and so forth. And I had women that were full-time professionals that didn't have time to do just about anything other than their job and, you know, the bare basics with their families. So it just totally depended, but knowing who your target market is, what they're like, really who that core is really important for you, because that's going to help you better understand their buying habits, particularly if you are running a brand. A store is a little bit more of a different animal because people will stop into your store and they're likely to be far more dispersed as far as their interests are concerned, at least depending on the kind of store. Whereas there's others to where, yes, you're going to definitely be driving a very specific group to buy your particular widget B17 or whatever it is. In any case, this little circle right in the middle, the little bullseye, is the target. And for those of you that haven't heard me talk about this, and I've forgotten, forgive me, I think the next slide talks about it. So I'm going to skip beyond this here to the next slide here, the 80-20 rule. But this little target right here is that 20%. This is the other 80%. So we'll come back to this in just a second. Strategy decisions can be very difficult. I'm going to talk to you here about narrowing your options and knowing who that 80-20 is in your business. The 80-20 rule basically says this. It says that 20% of your business is really going to be driven by 20% of your customers. So you have, out of all your customers that are out there, obviously 100% is the total, 80% of your business will be driven by 20% of your customers, meaning that 20% of your customers are extremely important to you. You need to know what makes them tick. So consequently, that's true in offline marketing, it's true in online marketing, but I would say it's even more true in online marketing just because you have an ability to slice and dice and target so narrowly in many of your online decisions that can make a big difference if you really know what drives your customer base, that 20% that is the all-important group that drives the majority of your revenues and profits. In fact, sometimes it's not even revenues, I would say profits here. Sometimes as part of this 80%, they may make up some of your revenues, but they're not driving your profit, and they may be very time consuming to you as customers. That's where a lot of businesses will ultimately decide, let's carve out and get rid of some of these types of our business that really aren't that profitable for us. Let's focus on where our profits are higher. So this whole little conversation we're going to have here for a minute is, again, some of you probably already had some of this depending on where you're coming from and which courses you've already taken. But it's really important that you understand that target market is absolutely vital, and it's going to be a pretty tight little group that is going to be the driver of the majority of your profits. If for many people this is very difficult for them to really grasp and embrace, they just feel like, man, I'm narrowing my options so much. Now, I'm not suggesting that you get so narrow that it's ridiculous, but certainly you need to have that really firm grasp as to who that market is, how they think, why they use their product, why they use it as much as they do, or they aren't using it more. What problems are you solving for them? What could you be doing to solve more problems for this same group? And so on and so on. The more you know about your target market, the better chance you're going to have of really increasing your profitability and or even expanding your product line to maybe meet more of their needs. That's how a lot of businesses grow, is to find a target market, really get to know that market, and know how else can we meet this market's needs. A common question that I get, especially in my small business classes, where, a lot of these folks that start small businesses really don't have the benefits that you do, coming from a business school background and having some marketing courses behind you. You've really got an advantage. So many people start small businesses because they're passionate about what it is they do in the business. I love cars, therefore I want to become an auto mechanic. Or I love knitting, so I started a yarn and needleworks store. Or I love traveling, so I started a bed and breakfast, or not a bed and breakfast, bad example. If you want to travel, you don't want to be stuck in a bed and breakfast. I like meeting people, and I like, welcoming other people, hosting, that kind of thing. Starting a bed and breakfast would be good for you. I wouldn't ever want to be tied down that much personally, but the people that love it absolutely thrive on it. So knowing what you like and what you like to do is many times the driver of why a lot of people get into the small businesses they're in. The problem then comes for them is they don't really know the marketing end of things. So they think, geez, who is the user of my product and who should I be spending my focus on? Let me give you a real quick example here. I'm working with someone right now who is making a very powerful, really pure form of vitamin C supplement. It's awesome, let me tell you. But in having my first conversation with the owners of that business, I asked them, who is your target market? Oh, our target market is everyone. Everyone should be taking vitamin C. It does so much, blah, 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 blah. And I heard a 10-minute liturgy of why everyone should take vitamin C and all the wonderful things vitamin C can do for you. And I listened, I heard them out because I wanted to hear their passion for the product and hear all the benefits too. But we had to go back to the drawing board and say, I understand that everyone could take vitamin C and it would be beneficial for everyone to take vitamin C. But if you're trying to get your product to jump off the charts as quickly as possible to grow fast, who should be your target market? And ultimately we came up with several potentials that we're going to be doing some more work on to see where are the best places for us to focus. One might be the health and fitness market, just because that market is very often used to buying supplements of various types anyway, and they have a high propensity to understand supplements and their benefits, and it's not as hard of a sell as it is for somebody who's never purchased supplements before, and then all of a sudden try to convince them that a $22 bottle of vitamin C is something they need to jump on board with and embrace and buy month after month. It's going to be a hard sell for some people. So how do you make that sell easier is the bottom line with your target. You don't want to cater to everyone. You cannot meet everyone's need. Your message is going to be mush if you try to target to everyone. So I think having had the 325 class, I'm going to leave this one alone here because most of you, I think, probably understand that pretty well. However, not narrowing your options far enough is something that a lot of folks still haven't grasped, and that's where I'm going to be spending some time as we go through the semester together, is understanding you need to sometimes, especially in the online world, get very narrow, much more so than you may in the offline world, just by nature of how people search online, how they find you, how they believe that you have expertise, that type of thing. Basically, a couple things to remember here. Not narrowing your options means spreading your resources far too thin. And also catering to everyone means no one's needs are being met particularly well. So both of those broad, anytime you're trying to say almost everyone, or just huge markets would appeal, it's just going too broad. We'll talk more about that as we go along. Oh, skipped another slide here, I think. Oh, no, we didn't. Sorry, it was my bad. Insights from target markets, kinds of things you would want to ask them. What drives their purchase decisions? What are their pain points? What are their competitive options? Where do they go shopping if they're not shopping with you? What are their perceptions of those other options? What about your business meets their specific needs? What do they like about your business in particular? Conversely, what do they not like about your business is another good question to ask. How do they use media in the decision-making process? Which media do they rely upon most? These are just some basic questions to get you kind of thinking along this area, but you definitely want to ask your customers all kinds of questions. And this does not need to be a big fancy survey. You can certainly do those types of things. You might want to do a quick MailChimp, not MailChimp, sorry, that's email survey. Good Lord, there's too many monkeys in the online world, guys. I use 3. I use SurveyMonkey, MailChimp, and PicMonkey as 3 of my go-to tools. So I get very confused sometimes, so forgive me on that. I meant to say you can do something like a fairly short 5 or 6 questions, do a SurveyMonkey survey that might be just answering, questions around media at one time. Maybe the next time you ask them 5 or 6 questions to make it very, very painless for them. Maybe you incentivize them to say, hey, anybody who gives me their feedback here will go into a drawing for a $10 gift certificate or something that's not too expensive. And that may encourage some, just really getting some good valuable information that otherwise you'd have a hard time getting. Other times, though, it can be simply asking people, geez, I noticed you come in the store a lot. What do you like about our store? We really appreciate your business. Telling me what you like about it. Is there anything else you think we could improve on? I recently was doing a small business workshop, and a fellow was telling me that he runs an auto repair, and also I think he does some body work as well. So he commonly has people in the waiting room sitting while they're waiting to get oil changes done and services of various kinds completed. And he says it wasn't until he went out of his way during his slow period last year that he was just calling people and just saying, hey, we really appreciate your business. Wanted to get some feedback from you as to what we could be doing better and anything you'd like to see us add. And people felt he said, very, very valued that you'd be wanting their opinion. So consequently, he said that one of the things he found out that he wasn't expecting to hear about is the fact that he had a broken chair in his waiting room. And he said the first time he heard it, it was actually quite funny. It was a fairly outspoken older gentleman who just kind of cut to the chase in his verbiage. And he said, I kid you not, this is what the gentleman said in my workshop. He says, yeah, this guy just told me, he says, you need to get rid of that chair in the waiting room that bites your ass. And he said that the chair in the waiting room apparently had a broken hinge on the back side, so if you sat on it just right, as you kind of straightened yourself away, it would come up and grab part of your rear end. And as he actually finished his calling, he actually heard 2 or 3 people talk about the chair in the waiting room that was broken. And he says, interestingly enough, I don't go sit in my waiting room. I don't want my staff hanging around the waiting room. They need to be working. I didn't know about the broken chair, so I was grateful just to know something like that, needed addressing. And he says, now I'm going to pay more attention to my waiting room. After that, it kind of occurred to me that maybe I do need to be taking a spot check and checking things out from time to time. In any case, you can sometimes just find out from talking to folks. Talk to them and check out. If it's slow and you're not holding up other people, just ask them questions. You'll be amazed how much you'll learn from the folks that do business with you. This next slide is really just a recap. You've all heard about this. I use some of these same slides for other workshops I do. And I just put this one in there because I really liked the way this one was kind of designed, where the target market is sitting right here in the middle. I would prefer that was probably more of a circle, but it doesn't matter for Pete's sake. Just because the circle kind of shows that it isn't skewed one way or another. But the 4 Ps around the target market, that's what it's all about. There's 2 rules, I think, coming up with these 4 Ps. And this is absolutely essential that you remember. The 4 Ps, each aspect of each P must align with the target market needs. So if we go back here, I know I drilled this home in my winter session class I just had, so forgive me those of you that just heard this. You need to have every single one of these Ps must be aligned with your target market. Absolutely essential. Your target market is one that does not pay high prices. They maybe have modest incomes. You can't beat, no matter how much you think you're worth it or your product is worth it, charge a premium price if you've got a market that won't support that pricing. So again, every single one of your decisions made in each aspect of the 4 Ps must be aligned with the target market. The next one is that each P in the marketing mix must align with and support the other 3 Ps. If just one of these guys is out of whack, your product is fine, your price is fine, your place is fine, but then your promotional strategy, let's just assume for a minute you're a jewelry store and you have a jewelry store and the prices they're not through the roof. They're not Tiffany's, but they're definitely priced. That's where you want to go buy your engagement ring for your fiance. Your location, it looks nice. It looks, not necessarily like Tiffany's, but it looks upscale. It looks like a jewelry store. your product itself that you sell, the rings and the other jewelry that you sell, are of high quality. What if you had all of those things going and then you come out in your advertising, a promotional strategy that's kind of like Billy Mays, the fellow that unfortunately passed away, the guy with the OxyClean products. You wouldn't want to use that kind of an approach with a jewelry store. People just going, oh my God, disconnect, big time disconnect. Consequently, you probably wouldn't want to use many other types of advertising strategies as well, just because, again, it would be different disconnects. And I only use Billy Mays and the screaming into the camera just because that's such an obvious disconnect. But you need to really think about how your market is going to feel about that message. Is it going to make them want to buy for you, or is it going to drive them the other way? Sometimes something that you think is funny, your audience may not have the same sense of humor. It could backfire on you big time, for example. So again, without going into any great depth, those are the two key strategies that absolutely, I call them rules. They're two rules of the 4Ps. Each aspect of the P must align with the target market. Each P must align with other elements of the marketing mix. You'd be surprised, by the way, how many big companies make a mistake in that realm. It happens way more often than you think. Discovering what your customers want. I'm going to go on through this pretty quickly. Fine-tuning your 4Ps, developing core competencies, delivering. Sorry guys, I'm on some pain meds here. I'm tried to let them wear off as much as I could tolerate, but I'm still probably messing up some words here or there. So if you've noticed that in this presentation, I hope you'll forgive me. In any case, delivering what your customers want, you should be making sure that you're fine-tuned the 4Ps, developing core competencies, implementing appropriate structures and systems to deliver well, remaining flexible to accommodate new opportunities, and delivering on moments of truth. It's just basically good common sense, good customer service, making sure you're meeting the needs of your target market. For those of you that aren't familiar with the term moments of truth, that actually came out in a book, I think it was from the 80s, and for a long time it kind of stuck in the vocabularies of people, and it not so much the last few years, but I still like the term. A moment of truth is really where you maybe have something that got screwed up a bit, but you have the opportunity now after screwing up to win a customer for life. Because a lot of times you will find that people don't talk about things that are average. Where they're going to spread positive word of mouth is when you have something that is extraordinary. And sometimes the way to show you're extraordinary is how you fix a problem. So it was interesting. I had a situation at Pizza Hut. I think my 425 class heard this one too. But just recently I had a Pizza Hut experience where not only was the online ordering system not adding spinach to my pizza, but when I called it in and said there's a problem with the ordering system and it's not adding pizza to my delivery order, what happened was I called the order in, explained the problem. They still left the spinach off the pizza. So I called back after the pizza was delivered, and needless to say, they put a nice credit on my account and really apologized and took good care of me. And you know what? Just the fact that they treated me well, they put a credit on my account, and were very, very gracious about it and said, we are so sorry, that shouldn't have happened. Oh my gosh, the manager was mortified. But it showed me that they really cared. And I've had other experiences in the past where I know I've called and said that an order was goofed up, and in that case I had picked it up, and one time I even got an answer that said, well, you know, that's not our problem, you should have checked your order before you left the store. I'm like, really? That's what you're going to do? Not a good way to do customer service. So that's really what a moment of truth is. You can make or break yourself by how you handle a situation that could go sideways, or it could make someone very loyal to you because you handled it well. At this point, you can just start thinking about marketing tactics. And again, I'm just kind of pulling together some of these basic marketing principles. I know some of you are taking classes part-time. Even in winter session, I had a couple of folks that told me they're taking, you know, like one course a semester. So it may be that some of you haven't had your principal's course or another marketing course for a period. I honestly don't know what your situation is, but that's why I'm covering off a few of these just absolute essentials in my mind on the front end to make sure we're all on the same page before we start getting specific, okay? So then you can start thinking about your specific marketing tactics when you've got your target market nailed down, you've got your 4Ps, you understand the rules of the 4Ps, and you understand what good customer service is. Then you can start worrying about your objectives, like determining objectives such as awareness, image, inquiries, reservations. Are you doing reminder advertising, or are you trying to, you know, get people to understand you have a product that's just come out the gate that nobody's heard of before? Determining what that messaging strategy is going to be. What's your value proposition, or your USP, unique selling proposition, or how you're differentiated in the market. What is your media strategy? Which media do your customers watch? Which that's much harder to answer now than it was 20 years ago. My ad competition students from the early 90s, you know, they could usually pin down several television shows that were the big ones, depending on who the audience was and the age of the audience. Here are several television shows. We know we can go in and reach our audience going this way. Nowadays, that's not the case. How many of you sit down and have regular network television shows you watch religiously? I know some of you do, but a lot of you tell me that you basically watch your television programming by watching Hulu or by recording. And if you are watching, likely you're recording these days. So media has changed a lot. Radio, and we're going to talk about some of these here in a few minutes, so I'll just leave that at that for right now. You want to definitely conduct a media vehicle break-even analysis. We'll talk about this in the pre-43 class. We'll be talking a lot about measuring media effectiveness and some of the things that we do there. Building on what's working and eliminating what's not. You're going to do that in both classes, so we will talk far more about that later. Now, before the internet, here is what a traditional list of media or ways we would try to communicate with our customers were before the internet. Yellow Pages was absolutely huge. Yellow Pages used to be where pretty much all local businesses advertised, because if you hear my cat in the background, guys, I'm so sorry. I've got a cat here who also isn't feeling well, and he is like half meowing, half moaning, and I can't seem to get him squared away in the other room. And I'm not in a position to get up and move him now, so hopefully he'll leave in a minute if you're hearing him in the background. Sorry about that. Just when you think you're all set up and ready to go. Anyway, I digress. Back to Yellow Pages. Yellow Pages used to be the tried and true where people would find you if you had a local business. You wanted to be the local car insurance agent, then you would put an ad under auto insurance in the Yellow Pages. If you sold home insurance, you would be under home insurance in the Yellow Pages. If you were a local tire or auto repair shop, that's where you put your ads. Now, you might also be advertising on television. You might be in the Missoulian. We're just talking local Missoula here, obviously. So you're probably using a combination, but if you owned a local business, the Yellow Pages was the first thing you did. Yellow Pages, not so much anymore, because where do people look instead of going to the Yellow Pages? They're going to the search engines, predominantly Google. Newspapers used to have lots and lots of loyal followers of the newspaper. I mean, in my family, I grew up with it. We got it delivered 7 days a week. It got read on the surface at breakfast. My dad came home and read it cover to cover at night. And it went out to the garbage the next morning when the new paper came in and replaced it. Nowadays, excuse me, your most heavy newspaper readers are an aging population. There are definitely some outliers to that, but for the majority, it's definitely an older population that is reading the newspapers. Television, as we just mentioned, watched very differently than was once the case. You don't sit in front of the television in the evenings now like people used to. It's more a matter of When can we fit it in? And we will watch our television to fit our schedule. That might mean recording, it might mean watching it on Hulu or Netflix, any number of things. Television has also fragmented itself tremendously. There are now so many specialty niche channels that are on everything from, excuse me, food to home decorating to geography to history to just any number of things, to say nothing of your stations dedicated to people that speak different languages. So, I mean, the choices are almost endless if you have a bigger package on either cable or satellite television. Direct mail used to be another big one. And interestingly enough, direct mail really took a hit once the internet came on strong and people really understood and started using email. Everybody switched to email because, wow, it's so much less expensive to send out an email than it is to send out a letter or a brochure, whatever it might be, but goes out. You're paying for the printed piece, you're paying for the envelope, you're paying for the stamp. You are covering all of those costs. A typical direct mail piece usually run, even if you're trying to go economy wise, is typically costing you somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 to $1.50. That's going with postcards, just because of the printing costs and the list that you needed to buy, etc., etc. Nowadays we used email. And what's interesting though is now there is such a proliferation of email that direct mail is starting to make a comeback. So this is going to be an interesting one to follow. Telemarketing really went away at the early 2000s when the do not call lists were put into action. So telemarketing is not even really still in existence like it one was. It's still used in really, really heavy moderation. But it is definitely not what it once was. Same thing with one of the last of the list here. Fax marketing was real big in the 90s, and even the first few years of the 2000s, faxing was a real common way to get word out to people. Not so much anymore. Radio and magazines, though, both are still around. They're both doing well, although, again, very much have been changes in the field. Magazines have really become much more niche oriented. You just don't have the variety of magazines that you once had. Again, there's still a lot of variety. Just go to Barnes and Noble and look at their magazine stand. But a lot of magazines, honestly, have folded because people have found ways to drive people to their website, and they're an authority that way, and they're maybe selling advertising online, so they're avoiding all of the costs of printing and that type of thing. They can be much more responsive and get their message across online. So again, magazines have seen a big decline in some areas and some industries more so than others. And radio, same thing, lots of changes. Radio used to be something most offices had on in the background, and you a lot of times had it on in your car, and you may well have it on as background in your home. And now radio, you have free online options that aren't filled with local ads. I love being able to have satellite radio on in a vehicle, or have a desktop version of a radio station where I can pick, hey, these are the artists I want to listen to today. So I'll mix up 4 or 5 of my artists that I really want to hear from and just listen to their music all day long in the background. So radio listening has really, really changed dramatically too. This has made it difficult for local advertisers to even know where I should be spending my money anymore. Some of these things just don't work like they once do, and consequently, I'm not sure if I'm doing things wisely or if I'm throwing money out the window. And that's a problem I really see businesses struggling with every day. Here is an interesting, it's kind of hard to see the size difference here, but this one on the left is a full-size phone book. This one over here, even though the picture doesn't show it very well, is one of the 3/4 size phone books. And this was a difference between just 4 years of phone book coverage in the Denver area. This one book was all yellow pages in 2006. Full size, yellow pages only. By 2010, It was this much of a 3/4 size book, and they were able to pack all of the white pages in there too. And if you looked at that now, I can guarantee you it would look very different yet. I just haven't been able to get a picture of one to lay it out side by side and make it a comparison, but I'd love to do that because my guess is it is less than half of what it used to be. So just a way to show you one of these media allows itself to be visually showing the change, and I just wanted to throw that in. So traditional media are losing their effectiveness. These are some of the things we just talked about. You've just got directories, they go out of date as soon as they're printed. I can't tell you how many times I knew people that were listed in the phone book and then halfway through the year their phone number changed. And sometimes not by the owner's doing. Sometimes there was a period once upon a time in Missoula where all of a sudden they split Missoula. Missoula was always 543 or 549 numbers, and then they came in with a 251. And it was a, you're changing your phone number and here's when it's going to change. All of those businesses ended up with their phone numbers wrong for a good portion of the year that book was out. Print publications, we've really talked about some of the alternatives and things that have happened here, so I'm just going to skip on by this one here. The new media is online, and we call it new media just because, relatively speaking, it is new. Certainly not as new as it was a few years back, but if you think about in the scheme of things, print publishing and print advertising have been around since the 1800s. Radio advertising has been around since the early 1900s. Television advertising has been around since the 50s, late 40s, early 50s. A lot of your other media have been around for years and years and years. So when you consider the lifespan of those media compared to this new online world, it is still pretty new. But what's really new is something, a vehicle within the online world is new every day. There's always new social media, there's new opportunities with all different kinds of things. We'll be talking about some of those as we move forward. Here's just a few facts for you. Number of web pages in the world, over 1 trillion. It's almost incomprehensible how many there are. 200 plus billion online searches each year in the US alone. That's how many people are going in and typing a string of words into Google, Yahoo, or Bing. The number of searches that are targeted locally by people putting in a zip code or a city name, 30% of searches are looking for local businesses. Isn't that interesting? 20% of online searches are done with mobile phones. That number is going up. In fact, I know that these were taken from 2012, so these numbers have likely increased pretty dramatically since then. And by the way, for your quiz on Tuesday, I'm not going to ask you a percentage number. I just kind of want you to get a general feel. Small businesses without a website, still 37%. That number has gone down slightly, but honestly not as much. That one I do happen to know. I just looked it up, and it's 32%. Local searches done on mobile devices. This is different than this one here. This is total number of searches that are done on mobile phones. This is what percentage of people that have mobile phones do online searching, if that makes sense. So this one up here is saying the vast majority of searching is still done by something other than a mobile phone. But of those people that have mobile devices, 80% of them are doing online searches, if that makes sense. So bottom line is, if you have a smartphone or tablet, most of you are doing searches with that smartphone or tablet. There's 0% chance to connect with a consumer who's online if you're not online with the presence of your own. That's kind of a silly way to state it, but my point is, especially when I'm talking to small businesses, is how do you expect people to find you when the activity is going on online now and you don't have an online presence? And I'm sorry, a Facebook ad is no substitution or a Facebook page is no substitution for a website. I'm starting to lose my voice here, so we'll be finished up before very long anyway. You're probably going, thank goodness. Thanks for hanging in, everybody. I know this is not convenient for you, and I really appreciate your working with me through this goofy period. This is really something I just wanted to share with you because this is small business oriented. It's really all business oriented, but this is really fall small business is what I'm thinking of when I wrote this slide. So many, since 2008, businesses have really had some pretty significant pressures on them. One was that the recession that followed the banking industry crash in 2008 had led to a recession, which was very, very hard on a lot of businesses. So simultaneously, with all of the challenges small businesses face anyway, like small business owners wearing multiple hats and so on and so forth, then you have slowing sales through no fault of the business owners themselves. But as discretionary funds dry up on people, of course, that leads to smaller sales at small businesses as a result. So definitely slower sales and profits over the past few years have been difficult for many small business owners. Traditional media has been declining in effectiveness, as we've already talked about. So here you have this combination. You've got, gee whiz, our business is falling off some because of the recession. And now guess what? We have, in addition to that, we have traditional media isn't as effective as it once was. So you're putting money out there to try to drive sales of your business, and it's not working nearly as well either. So now you've got the double whammy. Then you've got consumers that are searching for businesses online, and if you're one of those businesses that doesn't have much of an online presence, that's going to hurt you because during this recessionary period since 2008 is when the internet has absolutely exploded. Business owners that do have an online presence are finding themselves just confused and frustrated. A lot of people, quite frankly, the term they use when they're in my workshops is they're just plain overwhelmed. They don't even know where to start. It's like, well, I know I should have a website and I kind of have the startings of one, but I really don't know what people want to find on there, what I should put. They will also tell me things like they're just very concerned with, I'm not sure, I don't have very much time to spend, and I just feel like all this social media stuff's going to be a time suck. Plus, I don't know how to use it very well. So a lot of them, the bottom bullet just says that many businesses lack either the knowledge, the interest, and or the time, and it's usually a combination, to learn online marketing effectively and to develop an online strategy. Most business owners that I see a very few that are the exception that have really tried to learn and really embraced it. It's not because they don't want to, it's they don't know how, they don't have the money to hire someone to do it, and they don't have the time to do it themselves. So they're stuck in this kind of a cycle of not doing what they need to do online, and most of them absolutely recognize that that's the cycle they're in. It's very unfortunate. So part of why I teach the 420 class is to give as many of you that can take that class the opportunity to at least be able to know the basics and handle as much if you want at some point to do that yourself. Or if that's not the case, then know some of the rules of how to hire somebody that you know knows what they're talking about so that you're not going to get I don't want to say scammed, but definitely just not as taken care of as you should be had you worked with someone that really knew what they're doing. Unfortunately, the industry has been just really prevalent with a lot of people trying to make big bucks by selling online courses, saying, hey, take this 3-week course from us online. We're going to meet 3 hours a night on webinars over the next 3 weeks, and you buy my little downloadable program and read my handouts. You can go out and make big bucks helping small businesses with their online marketing. Well, sadly, a lot of folks took that. A lot of those folks have gone out selling their wares, and most of them don't have a clue as to what they're doing. I'm certainly not trying to say that's everybody. That's not the case. But for a small business owner to know the difference is very hard. They don't know enough about themselves or know enough about it themselves to know whether they're hiring someone who's well informed or whether they're hiring someone that took a 3-week course and just knows how to throw out a few buzzwords. Let's see here. I've already talked about websites. I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide just because I know we're kind of running a little long here already for just sitting watching online. But here's my rundown quickly of why I think a website is absolutely essential these days. One, a website just lends credibility. I've already mentioned it's kind of like the business card of 20 years ago. If you don't have a website, people just start questioning whether you're really in business and really serious about your business. A website, though, if you're going to have one that's effective, needs to get found. And I have a question here about, is your website getting found? And there are some definite reasons that your website isn't getting found. I believe I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but if not, we'll be covering that here before too long in another lecture. How do you drive traffic to a website? You need to get visitors to your site, and again, there are some things that you need to do beyond just putting that website up. You need to get found, you need to get traffic, and also, is your web presence hurting or helping your business? And then a lot of times a very outdated business is hurting your business because it just looks like you're outdated. It could be sending a message. And I'm not even here just talking about the visuals. Certainly your visuals can hurt you if they're outdated and your website still looks like one that was put up in 1999. It probably isn't putting your best foot forward as a business. But having information that's outdated, I recently worked with a business and she still had information on her homepage about Mother's Day of last year. Doesn't really show that you're on top of the online side of your business, and that can reflect poorly on your business as a whole. So you just need to take care about those types of things. Whoops. Next one is why being on Google is vital. And that's because 70% of U.S. online searches are done on Google. That number fluctuates a little bit between about 68, 72. Right now, it's about 69% of all searching in the U.S. is done on Google. Just for curiosity's sake, because I know a lot of you are just chomping at the bit to know these numbers. Right. But right now, about 19% is on Bing. 11% is on, or I think, excuse me, 18% on Bing, about 10 to 11% is on Yahoo, and the balance is divvied up between a number of other sites like Ask and those other also-rans that are still out there as search engines. 80% of international searches are done on Google, so it's depending on whether you're national or international. There's no question. Google is who the vast majority of searching goes through, and you simply need to have a presence on Google if you're going to get found organically. 60% of searchers do not search beyond the first page of Google. So consequently, that means that only excuse me, just had to swallow real funny here. The vast majority of people are not going to leave page 1. They usually find what they're looking for on page 1. By the time you get down to page 2, you've only got that 40% left, and at that point only 10% are going to go on to page 3. After page 3, it doesn't matter. Honestly, if you're on page 4 or 74, it's about the same. Nobody is going to find you. So getting ranked on those first 3 pages, I would argue first 2 pages, certainly the goal is to be on page 1 if you possibly can, at the very least on page 2. In both courses, I will be teaching you a little bit about this. The 420 students are going to get a lot about this, so that you know how to know whether or not you have a snowball's chance in hell of getting on the first page of Google. I'll teach you how you can learn that, whether that's a possibility or not. Do you know what your potential customers are searching for? And that's where keywords come into play. And needing to be found by those searching for the goods and services that you're offering. A couple things on keywords. I'm just going to skip past this real fast because we'll be going into this in more depth. This just simply means, do you know what words they're using to search on Google or any of the other search engines? So for example, I pull this around the term, as I put this slide together, it was for another class about a year ago. And somebody said, I said, give me an idea. And somebody said, oh, let's pretend that we're trying to get tourists to Montana. I said, okay. So I had them throw out a series of words to me. And here are the words that they threw out. They threw out Montana visit, tourism Montana, vacation Montana, travel Montana, visit Montana, Montana vacation, Montana travel, and Montana tourism. And you'll notice that some of these are simply the reverse version of the first one you saw there. But interestingly enough, here's the way the search volume shakes out. You will find that, and again, these numbers are not accurate, but for trending purposes, it'll definitely let you know where there's more volume than less, etc. So this is a very good tool to use, and I will be teaching you how to use this tool in both the 343 class, there I go again, and the 420 class. Notice that Montana visit was down here, the low end, with only 36 visitors per month. The lower the number, the least accurate they are, but again, for trending purposes, they at least give you some direction here. At the high end was Montana tourism, 2,900 searches a month. Now, mind you, this is what they call exact match search. And what exact match means, they are typing in Montana tourism. That's all they're typing in. If they were typing in Missoula, Montana tourism, it wouldn't be counted because we were only searching for Montana tourism. There are other terms where you will include other words or change around the order of the words. We're not going to go into that. I just simply wanted to show you how helpful this can be to know, because a lot of times people will say, well, they just think, well, I use the term visit Montana, or I use the term travel Montana. So that must be what everybody's typing. Well, if you were making those assumptions, look at how far off you would be. So you really need to know not what you think people are searching for, but what are people searching for. And knowing that difference can be absolutely huge in getting your website found online. SEO is what's going to get your site found. That stands for Search Engine Optimization. And that simply means it's the various techniques you use to get your website to come up in the various search engines. There's a couple ways that this can happen. What you do on the site is very important, and that's called on-site optimization. This is where you're putting codes in that's only seen by Google. It's not showing up on your actual web page. Then there are other things that you do that are seen on your actual web page. You do not need to know any of these specifics for next week. I would want you to know what the term SEO means, for example. I would want you to know maybe what the term on-site versus off-site optimization means. But this is on-site, what's done on the web page, whether Google sees it or whether the consumer sees it. Off-site optimization is where you have links coming into your site from other sites. That used to be really huge with Google. It's giving way now to something called social validation or visitor interaction with your site. And that's where Google is now saying, hey, it's way too easy for people to go find links and buy links and whatnot. What we really think is a more valuable measure of whether or not a website is important is whether the users are finding it of value. So things that Google looks at is, are people sharing your content on social media? Are people spending time on your site? If they go in and see in Google Analytics that, hey, guess what? You're only having your average visitor is only spending 28 seconds on the site on average, that's not a very good user statistic. Or if they're only visiting one page of the site, just to give you an example, Google wants to see a site visit at bare bones minimum a minute, and obviously the more minutes the better. But bare bones would be a minute, or Google's just going to think you're not important at all. They want to see you visiting, ideally, at least 2 to 3 pages of your website. They want to know that your site is mobile friendly. They want to see that your site is able to be accessed by all different types of platforms, which is what the mobile friendly really alludes to too. They have a whole number of things they evaluate, and we'll be going into this more in depth in both of these classes. So just know that you'll get more details on this later on. If the website's not getting found, it's probably due to these reasons right here. There are three parts to getting your website found online. And here's where most people get it right. The three things are the site coding, in other words, getting the site to function as it should. The strong design, meaning it's attractive, it's user-friendly. People can navigate around and find the right pages they want to be on. And finally, it's strategic marketing. Do you have solid SEO? Do you have marketing strategy done on the front end? Have you integrated your online marketing strategies into the website itself? These two are done very well these days. In fact, with most of the website platforms that are out there, the WYSIWYG programs they're called, where they operate just like a Microsoft Word program, and you can build a website in just a matter of hours. That's pretty easy to do because there's so many themes, templates, whatever you want to call them, that will let you just build a nice looking site. The design is nice. The coding has already been done for you. You basically just have to drop in the words and tell it what the site you want it to do, and it will spit out a new site for you. Where the majority of sites go wrong is here. Strategic marketing done on the front end. And this is not just by do-it-yourselfers, guys. This is something that it's really sad to say, but the vast majority of people that learn how to build websites are taught all about coding, and they're taught all about design. I know right now of two people that just took an entire course on building a website, and they never ever addressed SEO at all. Now, just from the little bit you know on the front end of things, if you have no search engine optimization done on your site and don't even know what it is or where it should go or what its function is, guess what? Your site is not going to get found by Google unless you're extremely lucky. And once in a while, that does happen. You will get lucky. But 90% of the time, you won't just get that lucky. So here's what happens. You have somebody who just paid anywhere from several hundred to several $1,000s to build a website, depending on the size of it and how many pages and what all's on there form-wise and interaction-wise and whether it's shopping cart or not, whatever. They build this site. It looks pretty. It functions well. People like it, but nobody knows it's there. How many small business owners do you know that would say, yeah, that's what I paid for, to get a website that looks nice, functions well, that nobody can find? A person buying a website assumes they are getting all three of these things. In about 90% of the cases, if not more, they are not getting this strategic marketing part, or they are getting enough of it that the search engine, or the website builder is telling the business owner that they're getting this. Here's an example. I recently was working with someone and I said, who built your website? They told me the name of the entity, and I said, great. Did they add keywords to your site and do search engine optimization for you? Oh, yeah. She does all of that. I went in and took a look at what had been done on the site. It was painfully clear that this person did not know anything about what she was doing, but yet she knows as a web developer, if she gets asked that, she better be saying that yes, she does. So she had filled in the fields, but what she'd put in the fields were absolutely worthless. So you will learn more about this later, and I'll give you some examples of what worthless is compared to what's really helpful in getting your site found later on. But I just want you to know this out the gate. This is something you will learn a little bit about in both classes and a lot about in the 420 class. Finally, we're almost to the last couple slides here, and if we've still got a little ways to go, but I'm going to buzz through them really, really quickly. Trends, social media trends. We're going to be talking a little bit about all of these guys in your classes. Just know these are the big six: Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Google+, and Instagram. Those are by far the biggest of the hundreds that are out there. The next slide, this is where the growth is right now in internet, is the mobile marketing. 62% of U.S. adults now own smartphones, and actually a whole lot of kids do too. But the adult market is gradually moving over to, or I shouldn't say gradually, it's moving pretty quickly, I should say, pretty quickly toward smartphone ownership. In fact, it's getting harder and harder to even find a bare bones phone anymore. So within the next few years, it's going to be almost exclusively smartphones with a few exceptions. Just know that Japan and Europe are both way farther along with smartphones and how they're used than we are in the US, so we know we've got a lot of ground to catch up here in the US, and we're definitely heading that way. Interestingly enough, less than 20% of all sites right now are mobile friendly, which means that a lot of you may have opened up a mobile site and seen something that looks like this, where you're seeing just a corner of the site, or else you'll see the whole page squished down into a teeny tiny cell phone screen. Either one of those is not mobile friendly. A mobile friendly site is where the site resizes itself to fit in a mobile screen, or it may have been built specifically to fit on a mobile screen. Either way, you're going to be able to see what you need to get to and not have to put on magnifying glasses or be scrolling left and right in order to get to read a whole sentence. Next slide is here. Just one about what does all of this mean for business. Really, the bottom line here is that traditional media is still very, very important. However, it's simply not as effective as it once was for all the reasons we talked about earlier. Marrying your marketing strategies, you need to be online and offline merged together. And what that means is you shouldn't ever have your website look totally like it's a different business than your offline marketing materials. You want your branding to come forth. You want to see consistencies between what you're doing online and offline. You also need to know what words your customers are using to search, that keyword research. And again, use these words for a lot of your online, but you also may find that some of these findings will be helpful for you in your offline terminology too. Using other findings besides just your keyword research, you may find that there's certain things you've done online people are really resonating with. Maybe that page that gets so much traffic online needs to be incorporated into your new brochure that you're updating for the first time in 3 years or whatever that might be. Use media that is right for your business, whether that's online or offline or both. You want to make sure that you're putting the focus in the right places. You want to also find out what's working for your business, continue using what works, and then eliminate what is not. You want to know what your conversion funnel statistics are. You need to know your numbers. You need to know beyond just your numbers, your pricing and all those kinds of things. But then knowing what your conversion funnel statistics are, you need to figure out if the various steps you're taking people through are coming through with a positive return on investment. If not, you may need to go back to the drawing board and either start from scratch or drastically modify what it is you're doing in order to drive your numbers up, which will ultimately end up on your bottom line. Develop a strategy. This is probably one of the other biggest things that I see. And again, it's not for lack of trying. It's just many cases if small business owners are trying to do this themselves, they simply don't know better. They haven't had the training. So they just end up doing a whole bunch of things that are kind of thrown out broadly, but there is nothing that really sticks as far as having, what I would call a true strategy of using the right online or offline media vehicles for the right reasons, and then monitoring the effectiveness of that to make sure that everything is, working for you as well as it could. Measure and tweak what's working, and then rinse and repeat. You'll hear me use that word a lot. Rinse and repeat what's working. Continue to tweak, rinse and repeat, then tweak it again. If it works, keep going. Use it, then just keep going on. Definitely focus on what's working and do not try to do everything. Another common thing I find is that people think, oh my gosh, well, I was on Facebook and then someone told me I needed to be on Pinterest. And then somebody else said, well, if you're not on Twitter, you're missing the boat. And then they told me I needed to start blogging. And then they said they needed to, The bottom line is what will happen is people will get overwhelmed. Pretty soon they can't keep up. And pretty soon what's likely to happen is they either go back to what they were doing to begin with, or they just abandon everything altogether because they get so frustrated with the time it's taking them. And that's why having a strategy is important. You'll be learning in both classes about the main social media, for example, and you will find that really most media would do well to focus on one or two social media. It is very rare that anybody should be on 4, 5, or 6 social media. If you're a huge company and you can hire people to do it all, great. For most of you, for most small businesses, you're going to find that being on 2 is probably going to be more than sufficient. Do those and do it well. You'll have far more success than trying to do everything and not do anything really well. And then finally, your assignment for the next class is the 343 students only. I want you to write just a 1-page paper that is going to single space. I want you to single space, sorry. Not double space. Write a 1-page paper that shares the following. I want you to share with me which social media you use most regularly, for what purposes do you use that social media, and what do you like and dislike about this particular platform. So again, I've said 1 page here. Now, it does not need to be 1 page exactly, but I would expect if you're doing a good job answering questions 2 and 3, you're going to give me some specifics. This is not a fill in the blank. I want you to really tell me about the social media you use most regularly and what you'd like and dislike about them. So be a little bit descriptive here. What frustrates you? What do you really enjoy? Sometimes you can have a love-hate with social media. In fact, I find most people do. So tell me a little bit about what those love-hate relationships are and which social media you're having them with. For the 420 students, I want you to make sure that you have signed up for the HubSpot blog. You are going to need to read the marketing blogs that are out for Friday and this coming Monday. And we are going to have a quiz in class next Tuesday. There are going to be, and again, we've covered a lot today in this presentation. I want you in the 420 class just to know the high points on this presentation so that I know that you have listened to it. And you definitely want to make sure that you can answer the broad-based questions. I'm not going to ask you something like a statistic from one of the pages, but I would expect, for example, that you be able to pick out the one question if I say, what are the 3 areas of searching, search engine optimization, you would be able to recognize the one that was not covered, that type of thing. So I'll keep the questions relatively easy, and as long as you've done the assignment by watching this presentation today, you will do just fine. I will likely ask you a question, or probably a couple of questions will come from the blogs from Friday and Monday. So again, make sure you read the blogs, and I will try to make it general for you, understanding, not even knowing what those blogs are going to be. You may not be at the point where the blogs will even make entire sense to you at this point. So I'll try to make them, if you listen to them, you'll be able to answer the questions, okay, or read them. I'm getting a little bit rummy here from talking so long. I'm hoarse. I'm dry-mouthed. My cat's still howling in the background. So I can't tell you how much, guys. I really appreciate your hanging in here with me to cover this off. I know it was a lot to do in this particular way, but I really wanted to set the stage so that we can just jump off next Tuesday and dive right into some more specific type of information. So if you have any questions, I will try to put good information on the website as well. I am definitely going to post the PowerPoint deck right underneath the video, so as soon as you're done viewing this, you should be able to see a link to the deck, and that way, if you haven't already printed it out, if it's helpful for you to review it that way, you certainly can. So thank you again. I really appreciate your hanging in there through this first goofy week, and I'll look forward to seeing you all in class next Tuesday. So have a great weekend, everybody, and I'll look forward to seeing you then. Take care.